By studying the history of places like Aqueduct Hollow, we can see that even though people in the early 1900s didn't have the same sensibilities about environmental preservation as we do today, they still had a certain care for the environment and the preservation of local species. Aqueduct Hollow historically has been a gathering place for locals. It was particularly popular as a site for Ascension Day celebrations. Large picnics were held, hosted in part by local Sunday schools. In 1901, the Selinsgrove Times-Tribune noted the large crowds that accumulated at Aqueduct Hollow on Ascension Day, and in 1941 it reported that hundreds of people came to the area in order to fish and picnic. The annual celebration was still going strong. Not all celebrations were so wholesome, however. In 1922, it was reported that several people nearly died from drinking bad whiskey at a party in Aqueduct Hollow. This event did not deter Francis Gemberling from building a park in the area in 1923, named Aqueduct Hollow Park. Aqueduct Hollow has also historically been a site for logging and lumber processing. In 1922, P.T. Moyer and G.A. Try bought 31 acres of land in Aqueduct Hollow and built a sawmill to saw building lumber. Some sawyers, like Try, purchased land called a timber tract, where they could conduct logging operations. Others, like Harry DeLong, took on contracts to log woods owned by others. Lumber workers, like many others, faced difficulties on the Aqueduct Hollow Road. Its relatively low elevation in relation to Penn's Creek made it prone to flooding during and after heavy rain. A concrete road was planned in 1922 and completed a year later, and work on another concrete road began in 1925, though some roads in the region remained dirt roads and required frequent upkeep. Eventually, in 1942, the flooding in the Aqueduct Hollow area caused State Highway Department engineers to consider a different route for the highway south of Selinsgrove. Despite all this human impact on and alteration of Aqueduct Hollow's natural landscape, locals expressed concern about the preservation of local species. In 1928, an article in the Selinsgrove Times-Tribune lamented the prevalence of nature lovers, who excessively picked rhododendron, dogwood, columbine, and trailing arbutus to the point that the flowers were scarcely seen in the wild. In 1932, Agnes Selinsgrove compared the nature lovers to two men who had shot and mounted what was potentially the last eagle in the region. Skoke warned that if the nature lovers continued to pick wildflowers the way they did, the flowers might also become rare. The practice seems to have abated somewhat by 1939, when the Selinsgrove Times-Tribune reported the abundance of laurel in and around Aqueduct Hollow. We can see through the example of Aqueduct Hollow that, though people in the early 1900s made significant alterations to the land through logging and construction, they expressed a certain concern for the preservation of the local environment.